Coming up on Network Africa. "14 soldiers killed by militants in Burkina Faso raid." It's the final day of the Lake Chad Basin Governors Forum annual meeting, with discussions seeking solution to the security challenges in the region. Plus, the United Nations says 7 of its officials who had until Sunday to leave Ethiopia have left for their safety. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Layo Adegoke. We begin with security stories in West Africa. Suspected Islamist militants have killed 14 soldiers in northern Burkina Faso. 7 other soldiers were wounded in the attack near the town of Yigu early on Monday. The Defense Ministry says a counterattack was launched that killed several insurgents. Back in June, at least 15 police officers were ambushed and killed in the same Yugu town. Islamist militants have displaced more than 1 million people in Burkina Faso, while many more across the Sahel region of Africa live under the threat of their violence. Well, conversations have continued in Yaoundé, Cameroon, on the second and final day of the Lake Chad Basin Governors Forum annual meeting. Our correspondent, Blessing Tuno, reports that the thematic panel discussions involving military and humanitarian partners are uncovering salient issues in the region that require new strategies to overcome. UN Humanitarian Coordinator in Nigeria gives an account of the UN's activity in northeast Nigeria, asking the governments of the Lake Chad region to consider a more sustainable approach to the conflict that's now in its 12th year. The 2-day forum aims to assess and analyze the political, civil, security, and humanitarian situation in the Lake Chad Basin. Well, joining us now for more on the conference, we have security analyst David Otto joining us from our Abuja studios. Thank you so much for speaking to us on the program.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, it's the end of a 2-day conference on the security situation in the Lake Chad Basin. How would you assess this summit so far?
I think, we would assess the summit, depending on the outcome of the discussions. Of course, this is not the first time that this event has been held. It began in 2018. And the point was to address the insurgency, not just from a community level, but from a state level. And this is why they selected the 8 most affected states. Of course, 3 from Nigeria, the Bay States, that's Borno, Adamawa, and Yobe State, governors and their representatives are in attendance. On the part of Cameroon, you've got the far north, and the northern part, which, are very close to the borders with Nigeria. And then, of course, Difa in Niger and the Chad Basin region from the Chad side. So it's a comprehensive event which was launched to specifically address the state-level intervention. So how the most affected states actually intervene and provide some comprehensive solutions to the conference. But I think from what I've seen, it does seem to be much more extensive than that. So they're not focusing on what the agenda is meant to be for the Governors Forum. They're looking at holistic issues, and I think that for me would be one of the so to speak, in a way, disadvantage of having such an event, whereby it is not really targeting what the scope of the Governors Forum is meant to do. So I think what I was expecting to see was how the various regions, and I mean the various 8 regions that have been selected for that, how they have developed their capacity since 2018, and to demonstrate what kind of challenges they are facing. So there is a lot to do, besides, the talking and, the assembly that is happening in Yaoundé.
Well, now, these governments are coming together to get solutions to the insurgency bedeviling the region. Of what impact do you think this alliance would have?
Yes, alliances are only impactful if the various states that are involved, as I did mention earlier on, have their own individual capacity. And but such an alliance only gives room for collaboration and coordination, whereby they can share their experiences, they can share challenges, but also share some sort of methodologies in terms of how they approach the insurgency at a state level. Now, what we've seen increasingly is the fact that we may have to see some other states within Nigeria, enrolling for that governors forum, because as we know, there are remnants of Boko Haram that have now established themselves in the the northwestern and the north central, specifically in states like Niger State. So we would see some kind of perhaps an increase or an admittance of these various states that are now experiencing Boko Haram to these governors forum. And I think the idea is to make sure you have a proactive intervention rather than a firefighting approach. So, I think the best way, again, is for each and every one of these 8 regions that have been selected to demonstrate how, and what kind of mechanisms do exist, for them to carry out their various humanitarian or security interventions. Mind you, we have already an establishment of the multinational joint task force, which does a lot of the security, but also soft intervention. So it's a matter of specialization and making sure that at both the community level, at the state level, at the national and the regional level, we have various bodies that are working in synchronization towards, clamping down on the insurgency from all angles.
Well, just finally, David, what changes, if any, should the region now be looking forward to as a result of the conference?
I think one of the greatest changes that I would be, proposing would be for how these states deal with the influx of repentant, terrorists that are flowing in from the Sambisa forest, from the remnants of the old Shekau faction. We've seen a lot of people surrendering, and they have been surrendering especially to the Borno state, also in Difa, which is in Niger, Chad, and Cameroon. So I think what one may be expecting now is for these governors to come up with a strategy on how to, first of all, assess these members who have given themselves up, but also to ensure that there is a proper channel of de-radicalization that coordinates with the ones, within the regional setting. So a framework, would be very helpful, but also to, ensure that they have enough, support, from all these donor parties that are there, to ensure that we have structural developments, which will then, entice more Boko Haram members to surrender. So it's a combination of a soft and a hard strategy, which, I think perhaps, would be the subject of the day.
All right, then. Thank you so much, security analyst David Otto.
Thank you.
7 UN officials who had until Sunday to leave Ethiopia have left the country for their safety. The organization's spokesperson, Farhan Khan, made this known, reaffirming the UN's position on the declaration of persona non grata status. The officials were accused of meddling in the country's internal affairs, especially in relation to the conflict in Tigray. Now, the United Nations says it was shocked by the decision to expel them. The US also condemned the expulsion, saying it will not hesitate to impose sanctions against those who obstruct humanitarian assistance. In the meantime, Ethiopia's ambassador to the UN also called for a replacement of the expelled officials.
Yeah. Our humanitarian colleagues tell us that the humanitarian crisis in Tigray remains dire, with 5.2 million people needing food aid, including 400,000 people living in famine-like conditions. The spread of conflict into the Amhara and Afar regions is pushing more people into desperate conditions. As we've been telling you, the delivery of aid has been difficult. Since the 12th of July, the UN has brought in 606 trucks of humanitarian supplies, but we need 100 trucks to carry aid into Tigray every day. The UN has not been allowed to bring in fuel since the end of July, leading to some of our partners having had to severely reduce or suspend their activities. Cash to run operations is also running out. medical supplies are depleted, with nearly 200,000 children having missed critical vaccinations. The UN is engaging with the government of Ethiopia for sustained and regular access for aid convoys. Meanwhile, in Amhara, fighting along the Tigray regional boundary has led to hundreds of thousands of people being displaced. People in some areas reportedly do not have access to aid or basic services, including electricity, water, and telecommunications. In Afar, it is estimated that hundreds of thousands of people are directly affected by the conflict, including tens of thousands of people who have been displaced and are in need of urgent assistance. Our humanitarian partners continue to scale up their response in both Amhara and Afar. The UN urges all parties to the conflict to ensure that aid can reach all civilians in need. Our colleagues say that without a ceasefire, humanitarian needs will continue to grow, and there will be no way to sustainably address the suffering in Tigray, Amhara, and Afar. What I can confirm is that none of the 7 UN staff named by the Ethiopian government is in the country at present. They have been moved from the country to ensure their safety. I'd like to add that our position on the declaration of persona non grata status has not changed. It's the long-standing legal position of the organization not to accept the application of this doctrine of persona non grata with respect to United Nations officials. And as we've said, this is a doctrine that applies to diplomatic agents accredited by one state to another state.
Ugandans traveling to its neighbor, South Sudan, no longer require visas to enter the country. The move reciprocates one taken by Uganda in September to scrap visa entry requirements for South Sudanese that came into effect on Friday. Well, South Sudan's Deputy Foreign Ministry confirmed the development, saying his country's decision is in line with the requirements of the East African Community. South Sudan is the EAC's newest member, and its founding treaty provides for the free movement of people and labor within the community. Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, and Burundi are all other members of other member states. Now, South Sudan joined the EAC in 2016, but has been slow in adopting some of the protocols, including the one establishing a common market. While gunshots may not be a familiar sound across South Sudan anymore, the remnants of civil wars remain in a far more tangible form than anyone could imagine. These are landmines and explosive remnants of war which pose a daily threat to women, children, and men in remote locations across the world's youngest country. However, the United Nations recently held an event marking the clearing and destruction of some 41 explosive ordnances in Ingulere, Central Equatoria, by holding a football match for community members on the newly decontaminated land.
The United Nations Mine Action Service, UNMAS, has been working in South Sudan since 2004, clearing some 45 million square meters of land contaminated by explosive hazards.
In this particular village, we deployed one of our teams, UNMAS contracted teams, the development initiative, clearance asset who completed clearance only recently. And apart from removing a number of mainly mortars and some projectiles from the village in between houses, they also located and safely removed and subsequently destroyed 12 60-millimeter mortars that were buried somewhere in this football field.
Working carefully with a small team of around 5, UNMAS took approximately 2 months to clear the area, which is now a football field. It was particularly time-consuming because they had to work alongside homes of community members and had to keep residents safe at all times. The event was part of the 5-year Safe Ground project launched by UNMAS, which is aimed at uniting communities through sports and ensuring children can complete their education in a safe environment.
The Safe Ground Initiative is a 5-year initiative that started in 2019 and ends in 2023. The thematic area for this initiative, or for this campaign, is to turn minefields into playing fields. So with that said, we see contaminated areas that are in close vicinities to schools or to playgrounds or where children convene, and we clear that contamination.
For the UN team, it's time to see firsthand the impact their work has on the lives of communities they are on the ground to protect.
This is a very good example of how clearance can be put into good use. In this case, we cleared this football pitch, but we are clearing, when I say we, I mean ANMAS, our partners. We are clearing schools, we are clearing roads, we are clearing clinics, we are providing support not just to the mission but also to our humanitarian partners. It just feels great being part of that.
For residents, the removal of these deadly reminders of a bloody past shall ensure trade prospers, children thrive, and people can live without fear.
Still to come on the program. A Ugandan Kung Fu master spreads love for the craft among youngsters in the country. Please welcome back to the program. The UN High Commissioner for Refugees, Filippo Grandi, is calling for greater international cooperation to solve multiple crises at the opening of the 72nd session of the Executive Committee. In his remarks in Geneva, Mr. Grandi said the organization will continue to strive and protect refugees, displaced persons, and the stateless.
We live in a difficult period, one where multiple crises erupt or worsen every day. We see this with COVID-19, which has left no corner of the world untouched, showing starkly the interconnectedness of individuals, where the health of someone on the other side of the earth affects mine. If the complex links between development, good governance, climate action, and security are not addressed simultaneously, along with increased humanitarian assistance, people in the central Sahel will continue to suffer the harsh consequences of a growing crisis, including forced displacement. If the parties to the conflict in Ethiopia do not abandon a useless, devastating military confrontation in favor of political negotiations, the humanitarian crisis in Tigray and other regions will spiral out of control. Instead of giving refuge to those fleeing wars caused by no fault of their own, we have in some parts of the world seen rejection in the form of walls and violent pushbacks, in the refusal of powerful countries to rescue people at sea, in increasingly restrictive laws, in more detention, including of children, and in dangerous xenophobic rhetoric.
Well, French President Emmanuel Macron says he hopes the diplomatic tension with Algeria will ease soon. Algeria recalled its ambassador to Paris on Saturday and closed its airspace to French military planes a day later after the French president made comments about the Northern Africa country. Or President Macron was quoted as saying the former French colony was ruled by a political military system with an official history that was based not on truth, but on hatred of France. President Macron also said he had cordial relations with his Algerian counterpart. The diplomatic spat comes days after France cut the number of visas it issues for citizens of Algeria and other North African countries. The National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa, NUMSA, has announced the start of an indefinite strike. The union is one of the biggest in the country, with about 155,000 members. The strike will affect some mining, construction, engineering, and automotive companies whose employees are also members. NUMSA is seeking an 8% wage increment and subsequent 2% above inflation rate for the following 2 years. Talks with the employer bodies have so far failed to reach an agreement. South African clothing giant, the Foschini Group, along with other industry players, have unveiled a project called Threaded Together, and it's a project worth hearing about. Partnering with a vocational school for the deaf, 150 students are deepening their skills at a new factory in Johannesburg. The Minister for Trade, Industry and Competition, Ibrahim Patel, says it's all in line with the country's increased localization of the textile and allied industries, as well as inclusion of usually excluded groups.
And with the tape cutting, the doors open to a factory filled with opportunities for some groupings often excluded from economic participation. Everyone in this factory is hearing impaired, and there is plan for more inclusion of more factories and more people with disabilities. A chance meeting at a conference gave birth to this.
The gentleman came to see me. He was from St. Vincent's, the School of the Deaf, and he said, don't we want to come and have a look? And we put a classroom together with sewing machines for the students, never to build a factory. But they adapted so well. I mean, these deaf kids were doing better than hearing kids. So when they graduated, they had no jobs. So they couldn't get jobs because normal clothing factories are not going to employ them. So we decided to build a factory for them.
We also brought in a number of other big corporates to help put this facility together. So this is very much a joint project by Corporate South Africa.
This initiative is also a byproduct of the Trade and Industry Department's Retail, Clothing, Textile, Footwear, Leather Master Plan, which set a target to grow retail sales from 165 billion rand in 2016 to 250 billion by 2030, with local share increased to 65% while creating over 300,000 jobs.
Today's event is about helping to create job opportunities. It's about promoting economic inclusion, supporting the localization efforts of business, of the unions, of community organizations, and of government. It's about skills development, about boosting confidence.
No, your sound is not faulty. Guests here were led into what the world feels like to the hearing impaired when excluded from participating in societal goings-on. The students here, who have done a 3-month theoretical study at their school, are glad to practicalize what they've learned.
Honestly, I feel like we need to empower other countries also. They need to get deaf people to work and to be employed.
Hopefully, UNET's prayers for more inclusion will be heard for many hearing impaired people around the world. And for the Threaded Together project, the TFG Group and their allies say 5 more centers are on the cards in South Africa. From Johannesburg, South Africa, Betty Dibia, Channels Television News.
Ugandan martial artist Manisuru Kiza, who started out watching other fighters as a teenager, he's now training with Kung Fu masters in China, acted in action movies, and is coaching youngsters hoping to follow in his footsteps or even be better than him one day.
Every morning and evening, children get to punch, sprint, and push up at the Kimanli Fitness Club in Wakiso District, central Uganda. They are students of 30-year-old Manisuru Kiza, who fell in love with the martial arts form after watching Jet Li movies as a teenager. Kiza runs a club in his backyard where he trains children aged between 5 and 16 years. Many students are girls, encouraged by their parents to gain self-defense skills.
I decided, no, these girls, they need to get what they call self-defense so that they can at least fight for themselves. If you come and attack her, if you want to rape her, she will be able to defend herself. That's why you see they are practicing. Yes. And also to keep their body, to be physically fit, and also to have power.
Kiza grew up in an informal settlement in Kampala and says he had to learn at an early age to ward off muggers. The Kung Fu master says he wants his students to live in similar neighborhoods to learn skills that can help them protect themselves. Kiza says he had 25 students before the pandemic, but the numbers have since dropped. The classes are free of charge. Among students on the program is Kiza's 5-year-old daughter, Asfi Nakilija.
I plan to use the techniques I've learned to defend myself from those who may want to kidnap and use me for sacrifice. When I am fit and ready, I will be able to fight off the wrong people and save myself.
Kiza, who previously trained in kickboxing, became so skilled that by 2009 he started starring in movies made by Wakaliwood, a Ugandan low-budget action film company. Who Killed Captain Alex? Wakaliwood's biggest film has nearly 6.5 million views on YouTube. In 2017, Kiza traveled to China to train with experts. The father of four, who is also a part-time painter, has high hopes for his students.
What I need from Kung Fu here in Uganda, I need at least to get, even if one person can go and compete in Olympics, World Olympics, I think it will be very, very better for me. And I will never give up until Kung Fu reaches on top.
Kung Fu is not presently an Olympic sport, but promoters are fighting for its inclusion. It is an event at the Youth Olympic Games.
Today. Thank you for watching. I'm Layo Adebuke.